Hello. My name is Sam Snider-Held. I'm a creative technologist at MediaMonks. We are a creative global production partner. This means we make everything from augmented reality and virtual reality to campaign websites to native apps to installations, banner ads. Essentially anything that's digital and has pixels, we will make it for you. And so the briefing I got for this presentation was a little bit about me talking about what does it mean to be a creative technologist. So I could tell you about my favorite projects and talk about how I did creative concepting on that one, did prototyping and made tools for that one, and then was creative liaison for that one. But I thought it'd be more fun to talk about what it feels like to be a creative technologist. So this is becoming a TechnoWizard, how VR, AR, and ML enable ultimate creativity. So what is a TechnoWizard? Well, nerd alert, the 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons player's handbook describes a wizard as somebody who aspires to become like the gods, shaping reality itself through the casting of a typical spell, requires merely the utterance of few strayed words and fleeting gestures, requires countless hours of study, and they learn new spells as they experiment and grow in experience. So when I think about this, it seems like it's a very good sort of description of what I do on a daily basis. The main difference is that instead of using Power Stones and spell books, I use virtual reality, augmented reality, programming, and more machine learning. So what makes a great techno-wizard? Well, it's basically somebody who has an obsessive drive to learn technology for a creative goal. That creative goal is really important because that's gonna drive you through all of the hard technical learning that you need to do. And my goal is technologically driven lucid dreaming. This is basically the idea that you can take what's in here and through technology, get it out here with as minimum friction as possible. And when I say out here, that could be VR, AR, but it could also be a screen, painting, any sort of medium at all. So now we're gonna start thinking like a techno-wizard and kind of take you through the process. We're going to start with a very common creative VR problem. How do we do content creation in VR as natural as movement is, or any other sort of things that you would normally do in VR? Because we have this really futuristic medium out there, and yet all of our interfaces are still two-dimensional menus and screens. So thinking about that, a typical sort of beginning to my creative cycle starts at 2 a.m. I'll be trying to sleep, and then you see something like this. You're trying to sleep. Yes, brain, shut up. And then what if we use machine learning to do crazy VR stuff? And then from that moment, I'm fixated, right? The next morning, I get up, I do a ton of Google searches, copious amounts of YouTube watching, and then hours, if not days, of prototyping and programming. And then we get something like this, which is a VR creative interface in which we use drawing instead of a menu. So here I'm drawing a simple icon for a house, and then all of a sudden you'll see I'll be able to start placing as many houses in VR as I want. And so you can start to see that sort of lucid dreaming type thing where I'm minimizing the amount of effort that my brain has to do to do creative work. So that's pretty cool, but a techno-wizard is never satisfied. Oh, sorry, I skipped ahead. So yeah, this works because computers are really good at recognizing images, provided that you have thousands of them, right? And if you have thousands of them, you can teach a computer to understand when it sees a variation of that. So here we have lots of trees, and so now I'm drawing a tree, and then I can start placing trees. So we'll fast forward again. This is pretty cool, but a techno-wizard is never satisfied. So cut to 2 a.m. What if neural networks could create its own assets instead of just placing them? So Google, YouTube, programming. And then you have something like this, where these are three-dimensional line drawings of trees and rocks and scenes. It kind of had, I went for this sort of Japanese Zen Buddhism painting style, because it's very gestural. And at that time, I didn't have 1,000 trees. I had to draw 1,000 trees in VR using a tool I made. And so this took around 3 days to draw 1,000 trees like this. But then you train a neural network, and you can generate these types of trees. And these are completely different than the ones I drew. And so we're starting to get to this place where you can teach machines to draw types of trees. All these are different, not the types of trees that I drew. And so that's really cool, but a TechnoWizard is never satisfied. So cut to 2 a.m., what if neural networks could create good-looking assets? Or rather, what if we didn't have to draw 1,000 trees? So Google, YouTube, code, and then now we have trees that look like this. They have a kind of graphite style, and these are generated completely by a neural network. And so the big difference is I didn't draw these trees. I synthesized the entire data set. And I did this by taking thousands of virtual photos of virtual trees. And then I used another neural network called style transfer, and I gave it this image as the style input. And then all of a sudden, I have as many sort of data set samples that look like this as I want. So it could be 1,000, 10,000, 100,000. And when you train a neural network on something like this, then you get trees like this. So these are all animations, but each frame in these animations is a new tree that the neural network could draw. And what's really cool is that I never taught it to draw images with 2 trees in them, but you see it's starting to do that here. So you start to think about how neural networks could be creative. It's really just math, but we'll use the term creative. What's also cool is now we can start to direct the neural network. So on the left, I'm doing very gestural drawings of blobs, and then the neural network feeds in the details. So again, we're getting to that point of lucid dreaming where, again, my brain has to do less and less detail-oriented work, and the machine will take over for the rest of it. So we're going to do one more, because a TechnoWizard is never satisfied. What if the neural network could generate full animations in whatever style I want? So why just stop at a single tree? What if we could draw entire animations? So again, Google, YouTube, coding, and we get something like this, where this is an entire animation drawn by neural networks. And the input I give it is, I want the dances to be like this, and I want the visual to be like this. Again, this is a lot of data synthesis using Unity. And then once we have that data set, we can have the neural network draw all sorts of animations. A lot of these are unique. Some of them are kind of copies of the data set. But then a cool interface that you can do with this sort of thing is you can draw a single pose, and the neural network will complete the animation for you. We translate that into style transfer. So this is the input that I give to the style transfer, and then all of a sudden, I have an animation that looks like this. So why am I telling you all of this, right? Well, this sort of iterative process of mine, it's never going to stop. I'm going to be doing this till I fall over and die. But while it may seem like I'm pretty far away from my goal, it's really not about achieving the goal at all. It's about learning how to make magic along the way. And so through learning all that stuff, these are all the different sorts of technologies that I've used and made stuff with now. And this is what makes me really useful as a creative technologist, not a techno-wizard anymore, but back to the real world, is that I've now made things with all these, and it's more than just reading blogs about them. But I have a good sense of how they can work and what will work. And whereas I started off as the VR, AR guy, now I'm the VR, AR, ML guy. So some final tips about becoming a techno-wizard. Read lots of science fiction. Basically, any sort of creative technical idea that you have, somebody wrote about it 30 years ago. Don't have preconceived ideas about what it is and isn't possible, right? Maybe you're wrong, but that sort of idea that this thing is possible, that will drive you to make really crazy stuff in the meantime. If it has been learned, you can learn it too. This is a really core belief of mine. If somebody's discovered something, that means you should be able to learn it. The only difference is how long it takes you to learn it versus other people, but you will be able to learn it. Don't wait for other people to tell you what to work on or what to think about. And then finally, make your clients and bosses happy by first making yourself happy. No one's going to be passionate about what you make unless you're passionate about it first. So, thank you. Questions?
Wow. All right. We have a time for a little Q&A. Hey, Chick, have you ever heard of TechnoWizard before?
Yes, I have.
All right. I thought you were going to say no. Okay. All right. Let's take a seat real quick. And we are a little pressed for time just because the day is run on with so much awesome shit. So, we have a clock right there. We've got to watch that. We're going to get in trouble if something happens. One question I want to ask, and then we're going to open up the floor. you just punched us in the face with a bunch of awesome, and it was great.
Good,
Thank
yeah.
you. And I'm sure there's going to be people that'll probably come up to you, hopefully, don't quote me on this though if it doesn't happen, but some folks probably come up to you and say, hey, I want to do that. How do I make my company think more like that? Some very awe-inspiring quotes at the end there. And that's kind of my question, is like what, if you weren't at MediaMonks, hypothetically, what could you bring to an agency? We were talking about agencies earlier. It's like how does that thinking, how do you see that thinking working inside of a...
Like advertising?
Yeah,
agency versus
exactly.
production
Separate yourself from production company for a second,
Yeah.
if you could.
Well, I think so. I think this is the type, so advertising agencies have a lot of creative technologists. The big difference is that they're not in day-to-day meetings with developers, keeping sort of a pulse on what's actually feasible. And that's where I get into that point about it's not just about reading blog posts and doing some light experimentation. So if I was at a creative agency, I would probably be doing the same things, because a lot of that's self-driven. Only recently is it as part of our R&D lab. But it's that requirement of making stuff and making not just small prototypes, but really trying to see it through and continue doing that. That I think is really important for agency creative technologists, because if they sell an idea to a client and they've just seen, oh, I saw this one thing where somebody did this, and I saw this other thing where somebody did this, so we should be able to combine them. That gets everybody in a lot of sticky situations. So yeah, I think you can still do this sort of stuff, but no one's going to tell you to do it, right? You got to have that sort of desire and passion to keep making things, because no one's going to tell you. Your clients are not going to come up with this stuff. It's up to you to come up with this stuff. So you really have to be self-driven in that sort of respect. So really, I don't think there is too much of a difference between what we were just talking about and doing it in a more agency.
Yeah. That's it, right? I mean, boom, that's, you just nailed it. I mean, like relentless, just obsession, research, iterating, and just doing.
Yeah.
And then you can make the computer create post-impressionist trees.
Yeah. But also, blogging also will help you. If you have like an end goal, maybe I'm just going to document my work in a public place, that will make sure that you don't just quit a side project or something like that. You'll try to make it as real and final as possible.
That's great. All right, opening it up. Anyone? No questions at all. Can we get a mic over there?
So what happens to all this great stuff? How do you merchandise internally?
So we're in a really cool place at MediaMonks right now, is that we now have a R&D lab. And so a lot of companies have had R&D labs that come and go. So we're going to get in while the getting is good. And so now we're applying this to stuff to really show our clients what's possible. So the drawing things at the end, that's going to be a project that we make a tool for our illustrators and animators. And then they're going to make animation, a little piece on that. And we're going to use that to sell to our clients to say, here's what's really possible with machine learning and stuff like that. So it's a lot of that. But a lot of it is then, if you make stuff, then you can really quickly make a prototype for when you are doing a pitch. So we get a lot of machine learning asks in, and so then we can really figure out how we can solve the client's machine learning needs in there. So again, it's not very direct, like this is exactly how I'm going to do it. This is more about when the time comes that you're prepared, or trying to preempt it. You're trying to show people, here's what I can do, and then hopefully you think that's cool, and you show, and they show their clients, and then you develop ideas around what you already know is feasible, and that's kind of the idea with the R&D department.
All right.
Thanks. I'm with a production agency, not unlike, it sounds like your company, doing things maybe a little bit more with legacy clients, and a lot of our customers are still invested in print. Mm-hmm. And I'm so interested in an opinion on AR as it relates to this bridge between a mobile device and something tangible, maybe a magazine catalog, something in a store window or on the side of a bus. It just seems like it's not happening.
Right.
And I hear all these stories about what's going on in Asia and Europe, and this idea of a mobile device or printed products even being active. And I'm just so interested in is it just because we're not good enough at creating the experiences, or is it the mobile devices? Or
It's so a lot of any project will die because of its final reach. We're all in digital, so we've all been sort of used to how we could share things, and that's the mark of how successful a campaign is. And when all of the AR technologies are based around apps, you have to download an app. That kills 95% of most of our advertising AR apps. But that's changing very slowly. We're getting more and more web AR, hopefully next year or something like that. And then another thing that's really exciting is Google Lens that's coming out. So they announced it last year. They're going to do some more announcements this year at I/O. But they are really focusing on sort of the camera is your access into the internet. And a lot of the things that they're starting off with is print campaigns that trigger something within Lens and then lead to an augmented experience, whether it's an AR thing or a microsite. It all starts with the print. So I do think that print is going to have another cycle of innovation around that. As long as Google Lens takes off and people start using it. But you can use it now. It just tells you what the Empire State Building is. But in the near future, it's going to start delivering advertisements to you. And so whether or not you think that's a good thing, I don't know, but that's going to be happening. So I think print and AR can continue to evolve. It really is about, we still have to download apps for it now.
That's great. Thank you for that question. We are out of time. Thank you very much, and thank you, everyone. Stay tuned for the upcoming content series.